The rain was falling hard over the roof of the old Montero family home that night, each drop echoing like an insistent reminder that something was about to change forever. The rattling windows let in cold drafts that swept down the hallway, carrying with them the smell of damp wood and wilted flowers. In the center of the room, a closed casket rested on a simple stand, surrounded by white wreaths already beginning to lose their freshness. Maria Helena Montero, the matriarch, was there, silent for the first time in 40 years. Gabriel Montero, the eldest son, stood watching the scene with a knot in his throat. He had always believed he knew his mother better than anyone, but at that moment, a strange and unsettling feeling was growing inside him, as if he were standing in front of a stranger. Next to him, Sophia, the youngest, kept her eyes fixed on the floor, her hands clasped tightly together as if she were trying to keep a secret from slipping through her fingers. Since Maria Helena's sudden death, Sophia had seemed more withdrawn, almost frightened, as if she were waiting for something inevitable to happen. Distant relatives murmured in different corners of the room, exchanging quick and uneasy glances. Some avoided looking Gabriel in the eye, others whispered words he couldn't quite make out, but the tone carried judgment. It was then, in the farthest corner of the room, that Gabriel noticed something. A small, dark wooden box almost hidden behind an armchair. The box had a rusty padlock and was covered with a fine layer of dust, as if no one had touched it in decades. He approached with slow, measured steps, his heart beating faster for no apparent reason. Lifting the box, he realized it was surprisingly heavy for its size. He shook it gently and heard a hollow sound, as if papers or small objects were inside. The padlock, worn down by time, opened easily when he used a hairpin he found on the table. Inside, there was an aged envelope and a bundle of letters tied together with a faded red ribbon. On the envelope, handwritten in unmistakable script, were the words, "For my children, when I am no longer here." A chill ran down Gabriel's spine. He knew he shouldn't read it alone, but something stronger than reason made him break the seal. The first words seemed ordinary but carried a heavy weight. "My children, if you are reading this, it's because I can no longer tell you the truth while looking into your eyes. I have kept a secret for 40 years, not out of shame, but to protect you. Now, you must know." He continued reading, but before he could get far, Sophia entered the room, her face pale. Her eyes immediately found the envelope in his hands, and she seemed to understand everything. Without a word, she closed the door behind her and walked toward him slowly. "You shouldn't be reading that alone," she said, her voice trembling. "That letter. It changes everything, Gabriel." Gabriel looked up at her, confused and anxious. "You knew?" he asked. Sophia looked away, taking a deep breath before answering. "I suspected. Mom let some things slip in the past few months, but I didn't want to believe them." Ignoring her warning, Gabriel kept reading. The following lines spoke of a distant summer in 1983, when Maria Helena was still young, and the family lived in a small town where everyone knew everyone. That summer, a stranger arrived in town, a man named Ricardo Vasquez. He was mysterious, charming, and seemed to know more about Maria Helena than he should. What began as casual encounters quickly turned into a secret relationship, charged with tension and danger. The letter described how Ricardo disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared, but not before leaving something behind, something Maria Helena swore to protect. As Gabriel read, the weight of the words sank in. "You grew up believing your biological father was Antonio Montero, but the truth is that one of you is not his child, and the one who carries his blood carries a history that could destroy more than just our family." Sophia brought her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back her tears. Gabriel, stunned, let the letter slip from his fingers onto the table. The two locked eyes, and in that moment, they both knew nothing would ever be the same again. Gabriel stood frozen for a few seconds, as if the ground beneath him had disappeared. His mother's words echoed in his mind like a cruel whisper. "One of you is not Antonio Montero's child." He looked at Sophia, searching her face for any clue, something that could confirm or disprove the suspicion beginning to form in his mind. But her eyes were red, and the tremor in her hands revealed she was just as lost as he was. The letter, now resting on the table, seemed to radiate a physical weight, as if the paper carried more than ink and words. Gabriel bent down, picked it up again, and decided he had to see it through to the end. Sophia hesitated, but eventually sat beside him, as if she knew running from the truth was no longer possible. Maria Helena continued in the letter, explaining that after Ricardo Vázquez's sudden disappearance, she found out she was pregnant. Antonio, her husband at the time, never knew about the betrayal. She simply told him she was expecting, and he accepted the news without question. But, deep inside, Maria Helena feared the day would come when the truth would surface. What made it even more disturbing was that Ricardo was no ordinary man. He was involved in shady dealings, had ties to dangerous people, and, according to her, carried a legacy in his veins that was not just of blood, but of debts and enemies. "Protecting you," she wrote, "was also keeping his past from finding its way to this house." Gabriel took a deep breath, trying to process the information, but before he could speak, Sophia stood up and began pacing back and forth. "This doesn't make sense. Why didn't she say anything? Why wait 40 years? "Because she was afraid," Gabriel replied, his voice heavy. "Afraid of what could happen if we knew." Sophia stopped and stared at him. "Don't you get it? This means one of us. One of us lived an entire life not knowing who we really are." Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket, broken only by the distant sound of the rain. That's when Gabriel noticed there were more letters at the bottom of the box. The first ones had clearly been written by Maria Helena, but the last few were different. The handwriting was firmer, more masculine. He picked up one of them and began to read. It was from Ricardo, dated 1984, sent from an unknown address. "Helena, I know you made the decision you thought was best for everyone. I will not interfere. But know this: one day, the truth will find its way to them. And when that day comes, I hope they are ready. I will be far away, but my shadow will always be near." Gabriel's hands trembled. The letter was short, but its tone carried a veiled threat. He looked at Sophia and noticed that her face had gone pale as paper. "This changes everything," she murmured. "What if he's still alive?" Gabriel didn't answer. Deep down, he was asking himself the very same question. The next morning, Gabriel decided to investigate. He began searching through old documents, photographs, anything that might reveal who, between him and Sophia, was Ricardo's child. At the very back of a wardrobe, he found a photo album he had never seen before. The images were of trips, parties, moments he didn't remember. In one of them, Maria Helena was smiling beside Ricardo, his hand discreetly resting on her belly. The photo was dated September 1983. Sophia walked into the room just as Gabriel was holding the photograph. Her eyes widened and she brought a hand to her mouth. "My God." "This doesn't prove anything," Gabriel said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it does," Sophia replied in a near whisper. "You were born in June 1984. Gabriel felt his stomach twist. The cruel logic was undeniable. If the picture was from September 1983 and showed Maria Helena pregnant, it was almost impossible that he was Antonio's son. The weight of the revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. The pieces of the puzzle, which had once seemed scattered and disconnected, were now starting to fit together in a merciless way. He remembered the subtle remarks he had heard throughout his childhood, neighbors saying he didn't have his father's eyes, relatives pointing out physical differences that he had always taken as harmless teasing. Now, everything made sense. Sophia, still leaning against the doorway, seemed to want to say something but hesitated. Gabriel noticed her nervousness and stepped closer. "You knew, didn't you?" he asked, looking straight into her eyes. She took a deep breath before answering. I didn't know for sure, but in the last few months, Mom was different. One day, while I was tidying her closet, I found a photo of that man, Ricardo. She snatched it out of my hand and told me never to touch her things again. I thought it was strange, but I never imagined it was something this big. Gabriel sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands over his face. This means the man I called father all my life isn't my father, and worse, he died without ever knowing. The silence that followed was suffocating. Outside, the sound of rain had given way to the distant crowing of a rooster, announcing the break of day. But for Gabriel, it felt as if the night had not yet ended. Sophia stepped closer and placed her hand on his shoulder. Gabriel, the letter said he had enemies. What if this secret isn't just about who your father is, but also about what he did? The question lingered in the air, heavy with dangerous implications. Gabriel knew that if he wanted answers, he would have to dig deep into the past of a man he had never met, and who, according to his mother, was tied to a dangerous world. That afternoon, he decided to visit Great-Aunt Lucinda, the only living person who might know something about the summer of 1983. The elderly woman, now well over 80, lived alone in a house far from town, surrounded by tall trees and a creaking iron gate. Lucinda greeted her grandnephew with a wary look. "I knew this day would come," she said, before Gabriel could even explain why he was there. They sat in the kitchen, and Lucinda served strong coffee in old porcelain cups. "Your mother was a good woman, but she made mistakes. Ricardo was not the kind of man to get involved with. He had a seductive charm, but he was dangerous. Many people disappeared after crossing his path." Gabriel leaned forward. "Do you know where he is now?" Lucinda shook her head. "No. The last time I heard anything about him was in 1985. They said he had fled abroad, but—" She paused, looking Gabriel straight in the eye. "I have the impression he never stopped keeping an eye on you." Her words sent a shiver down Gabriel's spine. He thought about the letters, about Ricardo's veiled threats, and realized that perhaps that man had never been as far away as his mother wanted him to believe. That night, back at his mother's house, Gabriel decided to open the last letter in the bundle, the only one he hadn't read yet. It was different. The paper was yellowed, but the edges were charred as if it had survived a fire. The words were brief but devastating. "Gabriel, if you are reading this, it means Helena is gone. Find me before they find you. There are things you need to know about who you really are, and about what you inherited from me." Gabriel's blood ran cold. The idea that there were people out there looking for him, people who might have reasons to want him dead, added a new layer of fear to the story. When Sophia read it, she dropped the letter on the floor. "This means—" she began but didn't finish. Gabriel knew exactly what it meant. Their mother's death hadn't closed a chapter. It had opened the door to a nightmare that was only just beginning. Gabriel spent the night wide awake. Every time he closed his eyes, the words from the letter echoed in his mind. "Find me before they find you." Who were they? And why did the feeling of being watched grow stronger by the hour? By morning, he decided to search through his mother's belongings once more. Among boxes and old clothes, he found a locked drawer in the wardrobe. Using a small key he found at the bottom of a purse, he managed to open it. Inside was a single thick envelope tied with twine. When he untied it, a small pile of documents fell onto the bed. What he saw made his stomach churn. Newspaper clippings from the 1980s, all about unsolved crimes, million-dollar robberies, disappearances, even the murder of a famous businessman from the time. In each article, there were subtle mentions of a tall man with light eyes known only as Ricardo. Alongside the clippings was an old photograph showing Maria Helena holding a baby, Gabriel himself, while, in the background, a man in a hat watched from a distance. Sophia entered the room at that moment. When she saw the photo, she brought her hand to her mouth. "Gabriel, Is that him?" "Yes," he replied, his voice heavy. And it seems he was never as far away as Mom wanted us to believe. Among the papers, there was also a handwritten address dated 1995 with a note, "Safe place in case something happens." Gabriel recognized the city. It was just over 3 hours away. That very day, the two of them got in the car and drove to the address. The winding road cut through farmland and desolate stretches of land. When they finally arrived, they found a modest, isolated house, its windows boarded up. When they knocked on the door, there was no answer. But around the entrance, there were signs that someone had been there recently. Fresh footprints in the mud and the still warm ashes of a cigarette butt. Gabriel tried the door, and to his surprise, it gave way. Inside, the smell of mold and dust mixed with something more recent, the scent of freshly brewed coffee. It was as if whoever lived there had left only minutes earlier. On the table, they found a bundle of unsent letters, all addressed to Gabriel Montero. The handwriting was identical to that in Ricardo's old letters. Opening the first one, Gabriel felt his heart race. If you've made it here, it means you're ready. But understand this: the truth will not set you free. It will destroy you. As he read, Sophia looked out the window and froze. "Gabriel, there's a car parked outside, and someone is watching us." Gabriel rushed to the window, but all he saw was the silhouette of a tall man getting into the vehicle before it sped away. Fear mingled with anger. He realized there was no turning back. He had to uncover the whole truth, no matter the cost. In a kitchen drawer, he found a folder filled with illegal documents: fake passports, offshore bank accounts, and a list of names with phone numbers. Some of the names were well known: politicians, businessmen, even members of the local police. Ricardo wasn't just a dangerous man, he was connected to a network that still existed, even 40 years later. Sophia tried to talk him out of it. "Gabriel, if Mom kept this a secret for so long, it was to protect you. We don't know what we're getting ourselves into." "That's exactly why we're vulnerable," he replied. "Not knowing makes us weak." Just as they were about to leave the house, Gabriel found one last letter hidden inside a book. It was more personal, almost confessional. "You inherited more than my blood, Gabriel. You inherited my enemies, and they don't rest. Trust no one, not even your own family." Those words planted a poisonous doubt in Gabriel's heart. If he couldn't trust his own family, what about Sophia? Gabriel left the house carrying the folder with the documents and the letters. The drive back felt longer than before, and the silence between him and Sophia was heavy, almost suffocating. Every curve in the road made her reflection in the window seem more distant, as if she were trapped in thoughts he couldn't reach. On the way, he kept replaying the last words from the letter in his mind. "Trust no one, not even your own family." The venom of doubt spread quickly. Who exactly was Sophia in all of this? Just a frightened sister, or someone who knew more than she was letting on? When they arrived home, Gabriel went straight to the office. He spread all the papers across the table, trying to piece together the timeline. Ricardo's arrival in 1983, his sudden disappearance, their mother's pregnancy, the life Gabriel had lived believing Antonio Montero was his father, and Ricardo's vanishing act for decades. That's when he noticed something he had overlooked before. In one of the old photographs taken at Sophia's second birthday party, Ricardo was in the background, leaning against a black car. He looked older, but there was no mistaking it. It was him. This meant that even after his supposed disappearance, he had still been nearby, and not just because of Gabriel. When Gabriel showed Sophia the photo, she hesitated before speaking. I've seen that man before." "What do you mean? You've seen him?" His voice grew sharper. "I remember when I was about 10 years old. Mom took me to a park and he was there. She said he was a friend of the family, but now I realize she was nervous." Gabriel's blood ran cold. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" "Because I didn't think it mattered," Sophia said, avoiding his eyes. "Not until now." That night, Gabriel couldn't sleep. At 3 in the morning, he went to the kitchen for a glass of water and found Sophia sitting in the dark, holding a letter he had never seen before. "What's that?" he asked, switching on the light. Sophia stayed silent for a few seconds before handing him the paper. It was another letter from Ricardo, but this one was addressed to her. "Sophia, one day you will understand that the blood running through your veins is the same as your brother's. Protect him, but never reveal everything. There are things that, if he knew, would destroy you both." Gabriel felt the world spin. "So, you always knew he was my father?" "I knew there was a connection," she said, taking a deep breath. "But I didn't know the extent of it. And Mom made me promise to keep it a secret." Anger rose in him like a wave. "You lied to me my whole life." "I was trying to protect you," she shot back, her voice breaking. "You don't understand, Gabriel. There are things about him, about us, that can't be spoken." Before Gabriel could demand more answers, the screech of tires broke the silence of the night. A black car stopped in front of the house and 2 figures quickly got out. They began pounding on the door with heavy blows, calling out for Gabriel. He and Sophia exchanged a look of pure panic. Gabriel ran to the living room and peeked through the window. One of the men was the same one they had seen watching the house at the safe place. The other, older, had a hard, cold expression. The pounding grew louder. "Gabriel Montero, we know you're in there. It's time to talk about your father." Gabriel's stomach churned. This was no longer just a family secret. It was a trap closing in. His heart pounded in his chest. The knocks were so forceful it felt like the door would burst open at any moment. Sophia clutched his arm, her eyes wide. "Don't open it," she whispered, almost voiceless. But Gabriel knew they couldn't avoid it forever. Taking cautious steps, he approached the door and asked, "Who are you?" The reply came quickly, deep and threatening. "Friends of your father. Ricardo sends his regards." The name made a chill shoot down his spine. Before he could react, the lock was forced, and the door flew open with a crash. The 2 men entered as if they owned the place. The older one, wearing a dark suit, had eyes that were cold and calculating. The younger, stocky and with a scruffy beard, shut the door behind them. "Let's cut the family drama, Gabriel," the man in the suit said. "You already know who your father is. What you might not know is what you inherited from him." Sophia stepped forward. "Get out of here now," she shouted, but her voice trembled. The younger man laughed. "Always so protective, aren't you, Sophia? Just like your mother." Gabriel frowned. "What do you want?" The man in the suit walked over to the table and placed a folder identical to the one Gabriel had found at the safe house. "In here is the real story of Ricardo Vasquez. The man you think you know is just a shadow. The real Ricardo was the mastermind behind a criminal network that moved millions. And your mother, Gabriel, she wasn't just a victim." Gabriel felt the air grow heavier. "What are you saying?" The man opened the folder and spread out old photographs. Maria Helena in discreet meetings, signing documents, and in one disturbing image, handing a briefcase to a handcuffed man. "She was his partner," the older man said with a half smile. "Smart, strategic. She was the one who helped Ricardo hide the money when everything collapsed." Sophia shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "No, Mom didn't." "Oh, but yes," the man interrupted. "And guess what? You two inherited not just the money, but also the moral debt to people who lost everything because of them. People who still want payback." Gabriel looked at Sophia and saw fear in her eyes, but also something else. A strange glimmer, almost of resignation. "You knew about this?" he asked, his voice heavy. Sophia hesitated, and her silence spoke louder than any answer. "I knew Mom wasn't perfect, but yes, I knew there was hidden money. I thought it was for our protection." Rage surged in Gabriel's chest. "So, you let me chase after this story without telling me we were surrounded by enemies?" Before she could answer, the man in the suit slammed his hand on the table. "Enough of the family soap opera. You have two options. Tell us where the money is, or face the consequences." Gabriel stared at Sophia, and something inside him cracked. "I don't know anything," he said, his voice cold. "But if I did, I wouldn't tell you." The man in the suit smirked. "Wrong choice." He motioned to his partner, who stepped towards Sophia. Her scream echoed through the house as Gabriel lunged forward, but the younger man struck him hard, knocking him to the floor. Pain exploded in his head and his vision blurred. Through the haze, he saw Sophia being dragged out the door. The last thing he caught before losing consciousness was the black car speeding away, taking not only his sister, but the last fragile piece of what remained of the Montero family. Gabriel awoke to a pounding headache and the metallic taste of blood in his mouth. The cold floor of the living room was stained with small drops of red. The house was silent, broken only by the distant barking of a dog in the street. Sophia was gone. Forcing himself to his feet, he moved with a single certainty. He had to find her. Rushing to his room, he grabbed the folder of documents recovered from the safe place and began rifling through them for clues. On an old, nearly illegible receipt, he noticed a handwritten note, an address in the city's port district. Without wasting another second, he drove there. The location turned out to be an abandoned warehouse surrounded by rusted shipping containers. Inside, the air reeked of burnt oil and damp wood. His footsteps echoed as he moved cautiously through the dim corridors. A deep male voice came from a side hallway. "I thought you'd be smarter, Gabriel." He turned, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. Standing before him was a tall man with graying hair and piercing light eyes, the same eyes Gabriel had seen in the mirror his whole life. "Ricardo Vasquez," Gabriel muttered. The man gave a bitter smile. "I've always been alive. I just wasn't ready to reveal myself. But now we're out of time. They want what's mine, and what by inheritance is yours." "Where's Sophia?" Gabriel demanded, stepping forward. Ricardo gestured toward one of the containers. Two men pulled the doors open, revealing Sophia sitting inside, tied up but alive. She kept her eyes fixed on the ground, avoiding her brother's gaze. "She tried to protect you," Ricardo said, "but she made mistakes, told things to the wrong people." Gabriel started toward her, but Ricardo raised a hand to stop him. "Before I let her go, we need to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" Gabriel asked, suspicion thick in his voice. Ricardo stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "You're going to take my place. Run the operations I left behind. Keep the network alive. It's the only way to keep both of you alive." Gabriel felt the world spin. "You're asking me to continue what destroyed our family?" "I'm asking you to survive," Ricardo replied without hesitation. Sophia finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Gabriel, don't trust him." Her words hit him like a warning and a sentence at the same time. He realized that no matter what choice he made, there was no undoing what had already happened. In that damp, dimly lit warehouse, Gabriel felt the weight of his decision pressing down on him like a stone. He looked from his father, the man who had been a shadow over his entire life, to his sister, tied and trembling, her warning still hanging in the air. Hours later, Gabriel stepped out into the cold night. The black car was waiting, its engine already running. Without looking back, he got in. The door closed with a heavy thud, and the vehicle pulled away into the darkness. Sophia remained behind. Ricardo, too. But now, Ricardo Vasquez's blood and his enemies were officially part of Gabriel Montero's life and future. The road ahead was long, winding, and shrouded in uncertainty. The choice he had made wasn't about loyalty or betrayal. It was about survival. And survival, he now understood, came with a price. That night, the last remnants of the Montero family were destroyed, not by death, but by the decision to live at any cost.